Welcome to Nothing Moves Without Us, a Black culture podcast focused on the past 30 plus years of Black entertainment, movies, music, and TV shows. Bi-weekly, your host Clifford and Thomas will discuss historical and impactful shows throughout the Black experience and how they've kind of influenced our upbringings. I'm your host Clifford.
And I'm Thomas. Welcome back.
Welcome back, man.
How you doing today, bro? How's everything?
It's good. It's good. It's good. It's been a good week. But today's nice. It's not too. It was like 90 yesterday. Today's nice, a little cloudy. So I'm gonna go for a hike after this. What about you?
I've been good, man. I'm excited to dive into today's I guess movie.
I like how I talk about my personal life. Yeah. I just want to get straight to work now. I like that.
Yeah, my week was good. I literally did lots of work. I'm all about the grind. So uh,
Right.
being here on the East Coast, the weather is up and down. So we're in the 90s, summertime. So I
Right.
did
Right.
that, but other than that, man, just like I said, excited to jump in.
All right, man. So today's what? Dear White People, right? The movie.
Dead white people in the movie. So it came out. The movie was released in October of 2014, which is crazy. When I was watching it, I don't know about you, but when I was watching it, it definitely felt timeless. I thought it was a kind of a newer movie. So, um,
Right.
and it was directed by Justin Simien. Um, and the movie takes place at a at a school, Winchester University. Samantha White is a heritage media arts major who is running for head of house and ends up winning. She wasn't attempting to win, but ends up winning.
Right.
And yeah, the story unfolds from there. You have a bunch of different characters that are all on a journey of self discovery throughout this process, and
Right.
uh, yeah, we could definitely dive in from there.
Right. All right. Cool. So I get just to specify, I think Winchester was the predominantly white Ivy school, and the most majority of the black characters that we see were in their specific house, which is Armstrong-Parker. I think that's where the majority of the black students kind of lived, right?
Yeah, that was the name of the
The
house for the black
house.
students.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
so that's what she was running for. She was running for head of house um, for that particular uh, specifically for that because of everything that was happening on campus and because of, like you said, because it's a predominantly white university. So
Right.
um,
And I guess some of the things that were happening on campus, I think that mostly affected the black house was the integration of houses. I think was that, well, I forget the exact language used, but initially, actually, let me pull it up. I just want to make sure I get it right.
yeah, essentially there was a this whole thing called the Randomization of Housing Act, where they
Right. There
basically
we
wanted
go.
to segregate the the black student house to allow white students to be a part of the house. So,
There we go. Right.
um, yeah, it was a segregation, um, or a desegregation, I guess.
Integration. Yeah.
So that's what it originally started as. The House president previous to Sam, which was Troy, who is the son of the dean of the school. Uh, he was the previous president, and the whole reason Sam wanted to get into the mix is because she saw all this happening and was like, "Yo," and it's so interesting when the movie starts. She's like, "I didn't even think I was gonna, I don't even think I'm gonna win this," and she ends up winning. That's literally how the movie starts.
Right.
So yeah,
So what are your initial thoughts on the house randomization on desegregation? And it could be big picture, it could be just for the movie. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
it was a little confusing when I first, when the movie first came on, and that was kind of the topic because I feel like there wasn't enough information given on the reasons why, right? Like as the movie starts, you see these I would say these images of the different schools, and the school of law and what they are, and the different fraternities and sororities and so on. So when I saw that, I just was like, why? What's the reason behind it? There wasn't really much backstory behind it other than, as you said, it's a predominantly white university. So I guess that's reason enough as you're watching as I'm watching the movie. But
Right.
yeah, I just was a little confused when it started that way, but as the movie continued on, it made a lot more sense.
Right. So do you want to discuss in a flow of time of like thoughts, initial thoughts, and go throughout the movie, or just kind of make it full circle, like initial thoughts, and even as the movie continued, and
Yeah,
kind of bring out closing thoughts or
yeah.
specific things.
I think we could just flow as we go, right? It doesn't have to be specific on the flow of the
Right.
movie, because there are some things in the movie that I feel like we're going to discuss that are going to be out of, maybe something that happened toward the end of the movie, in the middle of the movie, that
All right.
is not within the timeline. So,
All right.
but how about you though? What were your thoughts? Your initial thoughts?
Initial thoughts, like leading into the, like, I remember watching the movie when it first came out, and I guess enjoying it. I enjoyed it for what it was. I understood it. I get the satire and the concept, but I think we watched it Saturday night, or maybe Friday night, and the week, like the days leading into it, I had no interest, honestly. Like the concept of it being called "Dear White People," and me realizing it, like watching the movie, like it's, I don't feel like it's for black people to watch, right? The concept, like going back to like the name, going back to like Family Matters, and just thinking about the name and significance of the name. It's not for black people to watch. Like it's not for us. Like I get it. I know all of it. I see all of it. And even watching it, the movie just feels like a lot of a desire for white acceptance. I think that's what I get from a lot of the characters. There's like this yearning desire to just kind of be accepted for, and accepted in whiteness, right? I think that's part of the. I mean, it's part of the black experience, right? Like, I think about Oscar So White. You think about all the pushback from black Twitter or black artists in terms of just not black excuse me, other black artists not getting the accolades and respect for the work that they've done. But a lot of it is still rooted in white acceptance. And watching the movie and seeing that and seeing it play out, for me, it's just kind of a reminder. Um, like the first few scenes when Sam is doing the "Dear White People" and the white guy that she's dating, I forget his name, but he calls in. He's like, why don't you do a dear, dear black people, right? And he's like, we don't need that, right? White people have already told us what they think about us, and for me, that felt limiting. Like I understand the history. I understand, and I think a lot of people do, right? We understand the history. You understand the limitations. I want to look forward. I want to look forward, and I think it should be kind of. I mean, I'll get into this a bit later, but I think there should be a twist where it should be dear black people, and it should be focused on doing the work that brings us together instead of writing letters to white people. Right? White people should be writing letters to us. They should be writing dear black people and apologizing if that's the narrative, right? Um, yeah, those are the initial thoughts.
It's spot on, man. And I guess, how do you feel about, you asked me about the desegregation of the house. How do you feel about it?
um, I feel like desegregation has been detrimental to the black experience, right? You look, you can always use Tulsa as the example, right? When black people kind of had their own town, they were thriving at doctors, lawyers, the thriving city, and it failed because of white arrogance, white hate, um, white jealousy. But through it all, black people have rebuilt. They've
Excuse.
so yeah, so sorry about that. I had some technical difficulties. I think that my last point was just talking about Tulsa and blackness on its own thriving and succeeding. Um, I think segregation kind of took that away from the black experience. I mean, we see the effects of it now, right? Although blackness has been on paper officially integrated. You still see the struggles, you still see the fights, you still the fighting and the desire to be acknowledged and respected within the on an equal and fair playing field. Um, and I always wonder if that wasn't the case. What would the experience be like? Again, my family's from Haiti, so I see what Black independence is and can be, but I also know that Haiti is the way it is because of foreign influence and because of the systemic whiteness, racism, and their effects and limiting. You can't have free niggas basically, right? So I get it, but I think there's a need for it in some type of capacity, right? Or there needs to be a place to escape, and maybe the spaces that we're creating culturally are just the modern day forms of segregation. But I just think, big picture, we still have to step into the real world, and Dear White People shows that although you can have your space, your space, safe space, you still have to answer to someone in power who is most likely white and who will supersede your choices and decisions. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you definitely broke it down way better than I did. But yeah, I also think too, looking at how the movie, the movie starts with that. It starts literally like giving us that bang, like this is what's happening at this university. This is what these students are going through. But on the flip side, it's it's just at a point where too, when you look at uh, how the dean and the president interacts. What are your thoughts there?
Right.
Because I thought that was an interesting kind of an interesting relationship and how it tied into everything that happened.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of the end point I made, right? Like, you can have these views and values and perspectives, and a lot of it is just a performing act, right? The, the dean, he's played by, I need better notes. Hold on.
Yeah, I don't know what the dean's is played by.
Yeah, Dennis Haysbert, who is like an amazing voice actor and this amazing actor all throughout. But his response, right, and his interactions with Troy is just I feel out of it. It's not Troy.
It is true. That's
What's
his son's
it
name
is
is
Troy,
Troy.
right?
Yeah, you got it, bro. You want it?
I feel out of it, man. I feel it. With
We've
Troy, it's a representative. Go ahead, go ahead.
no, I'm saying we've been.
It's representative. We down ourselves, man. Yeah, it's a representative of this compliance, right? Just like acting like when he's at the party, when the when the white fraternity is doing their Halloween party, their blackface party, and Troy gets the text and he's trying to tell his dad, "Hey, I have something important to tell you," and his dad dismisses him. He's like, don't embarrass me in front of these people. And who are these people? It's white people. So he passes down. He's passing down his oppression and his trauma to his son and telling his son to act in line so his son can just get as little as he can. But what does he have? Yeah, he's a dean. Like he said, right? There's a couple $100,000 in difference. He has limited power, and he has to answer to someone who's incompetent, right? He say he graduated with summa cum laude, but he has to answer to someone who barely made it, and now he's enforcing that lane on his son and limiting his child's experience. So I think, I mean, I know the question was like the dean interaction with the president, but I think it's representative of how when we limit ourselves as people, we pass down that limitation to our children, and that's when it really matters, because the next generation is the one who's supposed to have the fire and the drive to kind of push the experience forward. But if we just keep telling them, just get by, just do what you got to do, just get by, play the game. Like, the common phrase, "This is all we have," and if we keep saying this is all we have, this is all we ever will have. And you gotta get past that.
Yeah, well, I think even the way you've answered the question is it aligns with exactly how that space is. He brings up that point about how he the way he was when he graduated and what that looked like, and how he became a dean and his guy became the president. And you see that
Right.
dynamic too when they're having the conversation in the cafeteria. I feel like the cafeteria at Armstrong-Parker is just is it's a melting pot of all these different types of things happening in Black culture,
Right.
um, and you see that when Sam's having a conversation with Kurt, who is the president's son, and Kurt has his level of privilege where he's just like, "Do you know who I am?" And
Right.
Sam's like, "It doesn't matter who you are. Like, you need to bounce. This is not the spot for you." So um,
Right.
that contrast, and I feel like there was a lot of that in this film. Like, I literally wrote in my notes, it was like a giant one big ass versus battle because there was so
I
many
like
different things
that. I
happening.
like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just one big ass versus battle, bro. So many different things happening. So much contrast. You see, the black protests versus the blackface Halloween party, right? You
Right.
see, even like Sam's book, it's called Ebony and Ivory, I believe was the name, or something with Ebony Ivory.
Ebony and Ivy. Yeah.
Ivy,
And it's actually a book on race and from a like it's pulled from an author. It's
nice.
let's see,
Yeah. So you see
Frank
that
Stephen Wilder. Yeah. Yeah.
contrast, um, and then you have like even you look at like the light skinned girl versus the black skinned girl, right? The whole thing with Coco trying to get ahead and get this opportunity to be on this reality show, but the light skinned black girl who is the rebel is being looked at as more of a fit because she's bringing
Right.
that fight, right? And that
Right.
leads
But
to
behind closed doors,
exactly.
she's with the white man, right? Sorry. Sorry.
I'm gonna get to that. Uh, and then I'm just talking about the big ass versus battle, right? You have this straight edge black son who's the son of the dean versus this wild, I do whatever I want white son who's the son of the president. Um, so there's just a lot of like, I literally watch this movie like, yo, this is the versus battle before versus versus came out. Um, but yeah, that was my whole thoughts around those. That was like one of the biggest takeaways that I seen. But what were you saying about Sam?
um but on the surface, right, she's here, she's a rebel, she's down for the black cause. There's this a brown brother in love with her, but behind closed doors, right, she's in love with a white man, and there's nothing wrong with that within itself. And I think what ends up being wrong with it is her having to suppress who she is, who she loves, who she cares about, because of the black experience, right? And because of the fear of being judged, being the fear of um, not being accepted, right? Which again is just the black experience within itself, right? You can't be accepted you can't accept yourself within yourself because of social conditioning. You can't accept who you want to be within a black experience because if you don't fall in line with what blackness is represented as, you feel a type of way. And the people you love and care about, you have to push them away. And like I completely forgot that she was mixed until the end of the movie, and I'm, oh yeah, like her dad is white, and it makes that connection, right? She she has this estranged relationship with her father, but who did she go? Who did she choose to be with throughout it all? Another white man. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but the bigger picture, I think, and the bigger message behind it all is just instead of looking for the white acceptance or the black acceptance, it's acceptance within self. And I think like Lionel is like the true representative of that. So what were your thoughts on Lionel?
So just before we jump into that, man, it's like you in my head. Another thing I wrote, man, my notes was identity, identity, identity. Like
Right.
each one of these characters are trying to find their identity, and behind closed doors, every character is a totally different person, but in front of everybody
Right.
else, they're trying to figure it out. And you're spot on with Sam. Um, but to answer your question around Lionel, he was a very like in some ways a refreshing character for me because I felt like he was caught in between at the beginning of the film. He's trying to figure himself out. He kind of he knew who he is, right? He knew that he was this quirky, in some ways. I don't even want to say gay guy, but that's essentially how they describe him, as this gay guy. But he was just this quirky,
Right.
intelligent, writer who was trying to find his way, and he went from house to house, just trying to make it. Like, I'm a freshman in his university, trying to figure out where I belong. And one thing that stands out to me with him is that he talks about how high school was just a shitty for him, right? So it wasn't like he had this
Right.
great experience in high school, and then came to college, and when he transitioned to college, it was any different. He had challenges there as well with identity and trying to figure himself out. But I just love how his character developed, and by the end of the movie, he just knew who he was, and everybody started to see that. Um,
Right.
and I really, I thought it was dope, of it was dope of Troy to like say, when they were on the steps having that conversation, and Troy was like, "Yo, if I was your friend, or if I was in high school with you, or whatever, I would have had your back." I thought that was
Right.
a pivotal moment for their relationship, because there was a lot of
Right.
negativity for no reason. Troy was basically hating on Lionel for no reason, like, just because.
Right. Right.
But that's
Right.
how it is. We talk a lot about being black, and how we don't support each other, we're not there for each other, and that was a perfect example of that. Like, Lionel's writing this piece on Sam, basically basically being Uncle Tom in some ways, but not really catching it. And then, throughout the process, he starts to realize, like, they're using me, and I have a voice. So,
Right.
I'm rambling at this point, but he was definitely one of my favorite characters, for sure.
Right. Definitely, I felt that way too, man. And I guess like towards the end, just thinking about, we view, we're taught to view life kind of binary, black and white, black versus white. Like you said, versus battle. Me against them. But Lionel he was in between, right? He like I saw him and I thought of Steve Urkel, right? I thought of like
Word.
the nerdiness, the awkwardness, but there was still this refreshing, um, this not confidence, but this just refreshing belief in self. And although he was, I guess, shy and timid and unsure, and maybe he lacked confidence, right? Because he wasn't sure if he was a good writer, or he was looking for acceptance in his skills, which I think it's needed, right? But he's looking to fit in within himself, based off of who he is and what he does, not based off of his skin color, and not based off of the traditional, um, characteristic traits that we're taught to view ourselves in. Um, yeah, like he was and like, you look at towards the end of the movie, he brought everyone together. His
Yep.
piece gave a balanced perspective on what it was to be black and what it was to be white, and on campus, and people respected it. He earned respect off of I go back to honor himself through his writing, and sharing a fair perspective on how life is for both sides of people on campus.
Yeah. Another thing that I think was really powerful about Lionel is that he had moments where he doubted himself, where he was like, "Should I speak up, or should I do this, and should I do that?" And he was able to overcome those by himself. Like, he didn't have
Right.
anybody else to. He literally would think about it and be like, "You know what? I need to do this. Like, this is my time." Like, even when he went to the what was it? It was like a black culture meeting or something at the end, toward the end of the film.
Oh, BSU, yeah, Black
Black
Student
Student
Union.
Union meeting, and he's at the meeting, and he's like timid, and he doesn't really want to talk up, but he knows, like, the shit that's cracking at this party is not okay. like
Right.
like we got to raise up. And just the way he went about it, I just he like I said, definitely hands down one of my favorite characters. And like I was saying earlier, identity was something that everyone was battling, but even when he had the intimate moment with one of the editors at the paper, that that was even like it was awkward in the moment, but it also he didn't shy away from it, right? He wasn't like, ooh, he
Right.
just he accepted it for what it was. He's like, this is me. That's what I felt from him. And like you said, you know, that confidence, but also put that kid in check when he needed to put him in check at the party.
Right.
But
Like
yeah,
there's this so sorry. There's this like part of me watching it was like, there's this naivety, right? Like when the other female editor is playing with his
yeah,
hair and twirling her fingers through his hair, and he doesn't think anything of it. He doesn't think it's race based. He's just looking at it as like, hey, she's just playing with my hair. So like, there's always this layer of naivety um, with it. I think within the black experience, because you talk about like black paranoia, where you think something is something you don't know for a fact. It could be, it couldn't be, and I think a lot of times we kind of go for it. Yeah, I think it is what I'm imagining it is, and you feel a way about it. But his just pure innocence and just like people are people. Like she doesn't mean any harm by it because either she doesn't know or yeah, she does. It's not her innate intent. She's not trying to play me. She's not playing with my hair to stereotype me or kind of embody the stereotypical roles. She's just doing it out of curiosity, and I think the naivety gives you an ability just to kind of meet people, kind of where they are, and not and to have these prejudged interactions and just kind of accept things for what they are. But I think later on, when they were at the Halloween party, I think she made a comment. I think she was mocking the what's her name?
yeah, she was my Coco. She was
Coco.
mocking
Yeah, she's
Coco.
mocking
Yeah,
Coco,
yeah.
right? And then you see like her true nature, and then that's when you call it out. Like I think you don't assume that the intent is wrong. You either wait for it or you ask about it, and you kind of get clarity, and you judge people kind of based on that. And I think that's like really his character, right? Not being judgmental, but like going back to Steve Urkel, when something's wrong, when something doesn't feel right, like I'm going to speak up. I'm going to fight through this awkward feeling, whatever. I'm gonna do what's right, and I think that's what a lot of it needs to be. Again, going back to Troy, going back to his dad, something isn't right, but you're just going to play the game because it's easier to play the game. And for me, again, I go back to that just kind of being the black experience, is playing the game and it's getting by with what you can until until it's just the same as always. I don't know.
Well, another thing that I realized just by hearing you share that is that a lot of the cast, especially the black cast, were light. It was a lot of light skinned, right?
Yeah.
There weren't really, other than Coco, she was really the only dark skinned person and I guess Reggie and the black the black students of Armstrong Parker. But other than that, the main
Right.
characters are all light skinned. So you could literally say, or not say, but I wouldn't be surprised for someone to perceive that maybe one of Lionel's parents was white, or even Troy's mom is white, because it's they never
Right.
talk about that in the film, and that obviously that wasn't a point of emphasis, but I just thought that was interesting too, to have this guy who has this big afro, who's basically like, I'm growing it out, but every time he has a moment of a flashback, he has short hair. He's
Right.
like,
Right.
and that I just thought that was interesting, and that raises a question. You know, obviously we're not biracial, but being biracial or growing up of different cultures in today's society, what does that look like, right? And I guess we can only speculate, or we can only give our thoughts based on where we're looking at it from and from our point of view. But I just wonder what people go through in those spaces, right? Because I know, and I've had conversations with friends that it can be a challenge identifying as black, knowing that they're white, or knowing that they're, it
Right.
just, whose side are you on? And there's this tug of war, and that was something that Sam was going through. Sam was going through this tug of war,
Right.
and we identified that and figured that out by the end of the film. And by her going through this tug of war, she was taking it out on Gabe, but she also was taking it out. And Gabe was the white guy she was sleeping with and messing around with. But she was taking it out on him, as well as the black students of Armstrong-Parker. So there was this once again versus battle, and in Sam's head, where she was trying to figure out like the real me is I show this with Gabe, but I also want to appease the black people and I want to stand up for the black people.
Right.
Um, so I wonder what people and obviously I would love to hear your thoughts, but people that are biracial, how they navigate that.
Right. And I mean, like, just thinking about to your last point with how Sam was with Gabe, it's kind of the same way Troy was with
Yep.
Sophia. When he used to smoke. She's like, "What do you do when you're in the bathroom?" He's like, "I smoke weed and I write jokes." And she's just sad and heartbroken. And it's like, why can't you share that with me?
I laugh so hard.
And it's and it's sad, right? It's like it's this oppression, right? There's like this dual multi-layered oppression, right? In blackness, there's the oppression in doing what blackness is represented as, doing clichely represented as, doing what other black people want you to do, not straying from the norm. Um, the and granted, I think, I mean, I'll answer a bit more, but like, do you think blackness has kind of outgrown that feeling? Like when you growing up, the cliche was when you watch someone black do something on TV, you feel like you did it. There's like the monolithic guilt and monolithic feeling. Do you feel that blackness has escaped that since from growing up, or maybe it's less than what it used to be?
Yeah, I definitely feel like it's escaped it just based on uh, where we are today and how we there's just this level to encourage us, right? Like everything we do now is you everything, no matter what it is, not only people copying us, but now we're just really one of those people that we want to enrich each other, and we want to talk about supporting
Right,
each other. I feel like it's way more of that now than it was in years prior, but also uh, we're at a place where there's a lot of talk, but also there's actions. You see actions
right, right,
happening, and
right,
some of them I agree with, some of them I don't, but I do appreciate the output, right? So you think about like the inauguration and the young lady, the young poet, what was her name, Amanda something, Amanda from the inauguration.
I could look it up if you
But
keep going.
you think about someone like that, and her having the opportunity to be on the world stage, sharing her piece about equality, a piece about unity. And this is a black girl from you can tell me exactly where she's from once you look it up, but um, it just this black poet is speaking at a presidential inauguration. So it's things like that that I think, because of where we've been, and how we're evolving as a black people, that what has happened or what we see on TV doesn't have that same effect that it did years prior.
Right. Absolutely. The having more access to media, social media, content, it shows more people of the side of blackness. Yeah, definitely. Her name was Amanda Gorman. She's
Yeah,
from LA.
she's incredible, but the reason I bring her up is because you think 15, 5 years ago, right? You think before Obama, like there wasn't no black people out there, like
Right.
maybe a Maya Angelou, but a young black woman in her 20s from California is on the world stage speaking about unity and equality. That's huge. That's the
Right.
world that we live in, and that's where our youth and our future is going.
Right. So going back to your question about being biracial, I don't have any direct perspective. At most, for me, I can do like the Haitian American aspect and being black, and I feel like I've talked about this. There's this, um, anyone, if your skin if your skin is black, if you're born in the United States or you come here, you're black by default, right? That's just what it is. You inherit the Black experience from the past 400 years. It's automatically ascribed to you by default until people either have dialogue and conversations with you or and learn where you're from. Um, so on my end, there's kind of this challenge of knowing that I have this rich history and heritage that's from Haiti, but knowing that being born here, that I inherit the Black history and the Black trauma and the Black heritage. And there's this, I don't want to say, maybe it's a struggle, right? There's a struggle of not wanting to be what Blackness is stereotypically viewed as, wanting to kind of honor my heritage and history. I used to be ashamed. I used to get teased for being Haitian back
Really?
in the day. Like that was something that was definitely rampant in the '90s. Being called a Haitian booty scratcher, people telling you that you stink because you were Haitian, because that's Haitians just had this negative portrayal about them. It wasn't until the 2000s where there was just this reemergence of like Haitian pride and love, and you really started seeing the energy and the respect at the Labor Day parade. Um, and you need that, right? Like going back to media now and seeing Black representation in a different light, you need it to change the narrative and change the conditioning of how you've been told to perceive yourself and told to perceive your history. Um, but I think, like, I mean, I use Lionel as an example. At a point, it doesn't matter, right? At a point, it doesn't matter if you're white or Black, and I think that's the goal for equality and fairness, right? It doesn't matter if you're white or Black. You know, race is arbitrary. It's not a real thing. It's just something we made up to group people in. We want to focus on people as individuals. Lionel's a writer. That's what I care about Lionel. I care that Lionel is a writer. All right, still fighting through some technical difficulties, but I think that the last thing we were talking about was
Something.
yeah, about being biracial and being Black or white. And I think I was saying, like, does it really matter? And my question to you was, like, does race matter to you? I understand that, and if it does, in what capacity? What does, aside of just being a characteristic trait, not even characteristic trait, a visual trait, like, what does it really mean to you, or what do you think it means to people?
It's a great question. It, I was thinking about it as you were sharing what you were talking about as far as you know being Haitian American, um, and right. So it's a hard thing because obviously I want to be as politically correct as possible,
Don't
but
be, man.
on the same
Don't be.
side I don't care. You know how I am.
Right there we
So
go.
so so honestly, no, it doesn't matter to me. I've created a platform, with Date While You Wait. That's all about connecting people from all across the world. Right, it doesn't matter who you are. Um, and I guess just to give our listeners a little background on Date While You Wait, it's a connection platform I created where I sit in the New York City subway and I connect with people as they commute. So I play board games, I have conversations with them. Anybody's welcome. It doesn't matter who it is. It can be a child, it can be an elderly person. It doesn't matter if you're gay, straight. It doesn't matter. Anybody's welcome. So I do agree with you. You know,
Real quick, multi-award winning TV series Date While You Wait. Don't undersell it. Don't be humble, bro. But go ahead, go ahead.
I
Don't be
appreciate
humble.
it. We making moves, but because of it, I've learned a lot about people, right? And I think the one thing that we lose sight of, especially when it comes to race, is that we're citizens of the world, right? Like it kind of blows my mind when you look at how we have all these border wars and who can come into this country and that country, and you need this and that. And I think a lot of it has to do with, to your point, uh, race being created to segregate us.
Right,
So, so yeah, I don't, I don't feel race matters, but I understand based on what the history of race is and where we are now, all the work we're trying to do to untangle it, to try to
right. Um,
deconstruct it in a way where we can move on as a people. But yeah, I really don't think it should be an issue, but it is.
Yeah. I like that you brought segregation back up because going back to the earlier question regarding segregation and my beliefs on it, and you brought up history also. The history is there. The history is there as a lesson. The history is there to show you what doesn't work, right? Because if we're still in the same issues that we're still having the same problems that we've been having, then the history is a lesson that like these solutions don't work. And going back to Troy and going back to the younger generation and they're white people, and going back to Lionel, like he's the future, right? Because he's the one who's gonna bridge the gap with and share a unbiased perspective, right? You allow both parties to see where their faults are, and hopefully you learn through that and you grow through that. So yeah, for me on the surface, it doesn't matter, but I understand it matters because of the history and because of the systems in place and because of other people. But within, I think within ourselves and within the work that we're doing, like you with Date While You Wait, me in terms of the writing and the content I create, it's bridging the gap and showing that it doesn't matter on the surface. It only matters as much as you kind of allow it to matter. And I think Lionel being the writer and being, I mean, like, writing is an art, and that's what art is supposed to do. Art is supposed to push the boundaries and how we perceive each other, how we perceive ourselves in the world. And it's supposed to allow people to understand the world and see things in a bigger picture. And I think that's what more of us should be doing, right? Going back to content being more accessible compared to 10, 20 years ago. You see more art, you see more representation, you hear people's stories, and it changes your perspective. And I think that's what most of the shift should be. The race aspect, the history, the culture, that me being Haitian American, yeah, it matters and it gives me fuel and drive to push forward. But it doesn't matter in the sense of this is it and this is all I am. So I think going back to like the biracial question, it doesn't matter if it matters if you're black and white in terms of the history and the legacy, but it doesn't matter in terms of what you identify with, right? The ideal world is just to exist how you are, and people accept you. But we've grown to be and we've grown, and social media has allowed us to create spaces. You can have all these different niche spaces where you can exist however you want to exist, and that's enough within itself. But I think part of what we've done, or part of the experience, has been losing focus on the big picture, and that the limitations on blackness, or whatever your race or your gender, your all the layers of existence, right? The big picture faults are still there because you still have the bigotry, you still have the limits, you still have the closed mindedness. But the responsibility for all of us is to kind of create content to bridge that gap and show that there's more to it. And I think I said initially going into their watching their white people, I was like, I'm not really into this. It's not for me. It's for white people should be writing the letter. But watching it again and seeing that, like, yeah, like the end result isn't just taking it for face value. Look at the undertones, look at the nuances, and how did everyone come together, right? Or how was there some sort of order restored? Someone created something that allowed people to become more informed, people gain more knowledge, and the tension is a bit lighter. Yeah.
Yeah. So while you were sharing, something popped into my head that I recently saw. It was a video that maybe 2020, 2019. These two little boys, they couldn't be more than like 4 or 5 years old. Um, they were invited to go on the Steve Harvey show because the white little boy wanted to dress up as his twin, for twin day at school, and his twin happened to be a black kid. So it was this white little boy who his best friend was his black kid. They wore the same exact thing to school, and they looked at themselves as twins. So your question around, does race exist or race matter? Not exist, but does race matter? There's your answer right there. Right? These kids looked at themselves as twins. They they
Right.
they they didn't care about race. They cared more so about the character of each other and the love they have for each other and the care they have for each other. And I remember Steve Harvey asking the mom, like, when your son came home and asked to dress up like his friend was the first thing you did, and she was like, I didn't do anything. I didn't. First off, I didn't know he was, you know, he was a different race, but also she's like, I didn't want to, you know, I didn't want to kind of cloud his judgment on who his best friend is, like that.
Right.
They're kids, right? And I think if
Right.
you know, we can learn a lot from children, a lot when it comes to how they interact with each other, and so I guess you know, as you were saying that, that's what popped in my head. I remember seeing that video, and I was like, this is, you know, as a society, we look at it, we're like, this is the cutest thing. This is so cool. This is so cute. But in actuality, it's like a lesson learned. It's a learning lesson from these
Right.
two kids that literally dressed up. They had on like you know khakis and you know a collared shirt, and they were like, "Yo, we're best friends." So
Right. And I mean, we know. I mean, we discussed that. You know, it is something that's learned, right? Like all bigotry, all closed mindedness, all limitation is something that's learned. Whether it's directly through your own experiences, whether it's your parents passing it down onto you, like going back to Troy and his father telling him how to behave and how to live and how to exist. Excuse me. But going back to like the innocence of childhood is it's just having these real raw moments, right? When a child is angry at their friend, or you know, someone hits them, or they hit someone, the parent says, you know, go apologize, right? Go talk to them, go have a dialogue, go take these small steps to rebuild the connection. But we don't do that as adults. We get caught up in being, you know, fake busy. We think we're too busy to make the work to, I guess, put the work in to kind of like build relationships and solidify a relationship. You know, once something goes wrong, I'm out, I'm good. You know, you should have known better, but it's not reality, right? People building bonds takes time. Building bonds takes effort, and it has to be a mutual work. And again, like I know the overall shadow, right, is like the systemic issue that just oppresses the shit out of us, that makes you not want to do it, that makes you see these people as being at fault on every level. But the system isn't the human interaction, right? Like there's a real human interaction that we all need to have with people on an individual basis to really understand that, yeah, this exists, but everyone isn't at fault. Everyone isn't guilty of it. And I think that's part of like what watching the movie helped reinstate that into my perspective. Um, so I wanted to ask you, do you think this movie is dated? 'Cause, like, you know, you brought up that it was featured in 2014, which it feels like a long time ago, right? But it also feels like this movie came out a few years ago. But you know, 2014 is a long ass time ago. So do you feel it feels is this dated to you currently?
absolutely not. I think the points and you know if the movie came out today, I would think it was something that that was literally created you know over the last year or so. Like
Right.
it the points are spot on. You know, like I said earlier, around you know some of the character development, and I want to answer your question, but I want to quickly take a step back because you talked about how you know a little bit of, when it comes to identity, but in race and how the systemic side of it is something that we fight, but at the very you know at the very least is like, hey, why not have this dialogue, this conversation to identify or to understand each other, right? Um, so when you look at that and you look at each character in this film, when they started to open up and be more vulnerable, a new side of them were introduced. So you look at
Right.
like Coco and Troy when they were intimate. Troy talks about Coco's like, "Hey, you want a pull from, from like you smoking?" And Troy's like, "Yeah," and he's sharing that vulnerable moment. Coco,
I thought he said he didn't smoke.
I'm pretty sure he said he does because I remember him smoking with her.
Okay.
I do remember. I actually took it down as a note. So
Okay. Okay.
he probably said he didn't smoke, but I think he actually did. So I guess he was implying that he didn't smoke in front of everybody, but he did
Right.
it with her. Him and her was smoking, um, as well as her like sharing her name. Right, share her. I don't remember her like her real name, but Coco is easier for people to say because I was. You know, my parents gave me this crazy name, and I'm from the ghetto.
Colandria Coco Connors. Yeah.
So Calantria. So and even you made me think of Sam at the end when she talks about her dad and being embarrassed at a young age. Like those are vulnerable moments. When she shared that moment with Gabe, it opened his eyes. He looked at her totally different. A lot of I
Right.
feel like a lot of their relationship and how she was acting made sense for him at that point. But like I said, you bring up a great point around being vulnerable, right? And being open to engaging and learning people, and it's beyond race. It's more so around who we are as a people. And I'm forever gonna say we're human citizens. Like we're humans, we're citizens of the world. That's what I mean.
Right.
Um, but to answer your question more specifically, no, I don't think the film is dated. I feel like I can watch it 5 years from now, and there'll be a lot of relevance. And they were hitting a lot of points on the head. The whole Medea thing had me dying. That was
I
that's
didn't like that. I
that
didn't like that.
had me dying. They're attacking Tyler Perry. Why? Why?
Yeah. I mean, because if it goes back to the limits on what blackness can and can't be, right? Tyler Perry can, and granted, I used to have those feelings. I used to feel, oh, this is embarrassing. Like, going back to Steve Urkel, why are you wearing a dress? You're a guy. Who cares, right? If everyone's allowed to eat how they want to eat, there's a market for it. If people find joy and pleasure in it, I think that's fine within itself. But again, the responsibility is that if you don't like this specific type of content, work with people and support people who create other content. Right? There are plenty of other black arts and black creators putting out different content. And I understand that mainstream focuses on Tyler Perry and he has the big budget. He has it because that's what black people enjoy and that's what they want to watch, and that's fine. But everyone's experience shouldn't be your experience, and I think that's part of the limit, and that there's arrogance within the black experience, right? Like, they're in an Ivy League school, so for them they think they're better. Like, I had this I recorded a video 2 days ago, and I had this weird experience where I was walking back to the apartment here. Car drives by, and it's a black dude, and he turns his head to look the other direction, like to like forcibly not acknowledge me. Most cases, right, when you're in a predominantly white neighborhood, white area, you black on black, we say what's up to each other, right? We acknowledge each other's
Head
existence,
nod something.
right? So he categorized me as thinking he's better than me because, yeah, I'm not him. I'm not, he was in a Range Rover. I'm not in a Range Rover. He probably think he's better than me. And I think that's part of there's a level of black arrogance that goes on also, and it's part of the conditioning, thinking that because, number one, you're in an Ivy League school, you have more money, or whatever it is, that you're not viewed, or rather you're better than other black people. And I think that's also part of the challenge and part of the oppression and part of the identity crisis, right? Thinking that we have to fit in the way it's supposed to be, but which way is right? And it's like, no, Tyler Perry can exist, Marque can exist, Will Smith can exist, Kevin Hart can exist. Everyone and anyone can exist, man. As long as you're doing what you need to do and not saying that this is the only thing we exist as, then it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter that Tyler Perry puts dresses on. There's- what about the other content? What about going back to the concept of this, right? What about the 30 plus years before this, right? What about the years to come? I think there's more to it, and I think it's limited, and part of me think it's a corny, arrogant mindset to have, thinking that you, you can't create the way you create limits the black experience and it offends the black experience. It can on one capacity, but there's so much other content being created that shouldn't be the focus.
Well, let's look at why Tyler Perry puts on a dress, right? Right. Let's just look at it. The reason that, and this is just my opinion, but the reason that Tyler Perry puts on the dress to be Medea is because Medea is a character. It's a
Right,
character. It's a character. Like based on, and I'm sure he's talked about this in interviews, based on maybe his upbringing that reminds him maybe of his aunt or his grandmother or
right,
somebody in his family, that that uh that had maybe a comical or had an impact on him in some way, and that's the character that he portrayed. Now, back to my point in previous episodes around why does this person wear a dress? To your point, that's them. That ain't got nothing to do with
right,
me. I could either consume it and watch it, or I can, not watch it and be mad at it. Like it doesn't really make sense. I think
Right.
the more that we put ourselves out there, the more that we create spaces for each other, the more we can continue to develop and grow. You know, yeah, Tyler Perry, wears dresses as Medea, but now Tyler Perry has a full production, like a full production resort, like
Right.
it's there was some reasoning behind this. I'm sure it wasn't
Right.
just I'm just doing this for the fun of it, but I'm sure it was like, and I'm just thinking to myself that he had goals, and one of the goals creating Medea was, I'm willing to bet, was to enhance the black experience, create
Right.
opportunities for us. And it started out with the Medea movies, but now we have shows like The Oval and Sisters and all these Tyler Perry Studio, Tyler Perry Studio, Tyler Perry Studio. So instead of us hating so much about, or being so upset by, of the things that he did to get there, we should actually take notes.
Right.
And even the whole reference around Big Mama's house, and wearing to dress this, wearing to dress that. Bro, people have been there, done that. Like Jamie Foxx, wore a dress on. I believe it was like in Living Color, or on one of those shows. But even that, there was reasoning behind it, right? People are creating characters. Um, so I think at the end of the day, we need to stop looking so much at what other people are doing to focus on what the advancement of our people look like. Like let's focus on
Right.
that. How we working toward that. Um, and to your point, if you have a problem with it, maybe you should partner up with Tyler Perry Studios and create content with
Right.
with that studio that is different, right? Um, so yeah, I'm there with you.
I wanted to. I realized we haven't talked about Coco and Reggie, who are like the only the like two darker skinned characters, but who are also like supporting characters. So kind of wanted to talk about them and perspectives on Coco and Reggie.
Well, Coco, she's the typical. I'm kind of ashamed of where I'm from, but I'm gonna do whatever it takes to I'm gonna outdo everybody, but I'm gonna do it my way. Um,
Right.
and I see Coco's, which I hate to say, but I see Coco's every day. I see Coco character every day. Still,
Oh, no, which Coco? The initial one, or the one who ends up changing her content so she can kind of be on the show? Because I feel like there's two levels. Like she started off in one specific with a specific mindset. Like she had her content, and then she was like, people want the drama and the BS, so she kind of switched up. So which one are you talking about?
both, but I would say more so the original,
Okay.
the first Coco, right? She starts off with, you seeing the content she created, and she's having a conversation with this, I guess, scout producer of this reality show, and she's basically trying to push onto him, like, hey, I need to be on this show, and these are the reasons why. Um, and he's like, it's not really divisive. It's not really, it's there's not really much happening here. It needs to be more. And I, when I read some of the reviews afterwards, people talked about, and you'll dive into the review, you got here, but people talked about the whole light skin, dark skin thing. I didn't really see it in that part per se, with the with this producer scout looking for the next big reality star. but but I do understand how Coco's character um, started to create, create a way, or create content that would allow her to be seen more, right? Allow
Right.
her to be more divisive, that allow her to stand out. And I think initially she started to make the new videos, even the whole video when she's talking about, weave, Um, like even creating that, you can tell that she, her deep self, she didn't really feel right about it
Right.
while she's creating it, but then she puts it out, and then she's getting acknowledgement for it, from the guys, and then you can see like this arrogance, like I did that, but at first she was really, she had you could see she was having some, once again, identity. She was trying to figure out
Right.
like, should I really do this? She's hesitant to press the send button, but then once it's out and it has 40, 50,000 views, it's like, I'm getting ahead, and that goes back to what you're saying, right? Once we're starting to do things that are getting a little bit of buzz, yeah, maybe something that's offensive to our people, maybe something that makes us look bad, but hey, I'm out, I'm out for self.
Right. And
um,
that's fair. I
yeah,
mean, on one aspect, it has to be for self, right? Again, I always I'll go back to Lionel. What you do. I mean, in reality, my personal belief in life is that everything you do should be rooted in who you want to be and who you want to be represented as, who you want to show yourself as. But there's still a responsibility, I think, in terms of culture and I guess a representation to an extent, but like kind of going back to the idea of Tyler Perry, like if you see something's wrong, then your responsibility is to try to fix it. Or something bothers you, then your responsibility is to try to fix it. I don't. I think part of the conditioning is kind of stepping away from the monolithic thinking of, like you said, you use the word like us and make us look bad, and like who is us really at the end of the day, right? And it's for every individual person to kind of decide. And I think with Coco, there was that discomfort, right? You can look at it as I use the word selling out lightly because that's kind of the usual term given to Black people, right? She had this platform, she had this idea, and it wasn't working, right? Or she wanted more from it, so she deviated and kind of sold a bit of herself just to kind of get behind the camera, which is something a lot of people do, right? That's the narrative. That's how you make it in Hollywood. That's how you make it on the big screen. You have to sell yourself. You got to sell your ass, right? That's what Tyler Perry. That's what Tyler Perry's doing when he puts the dress on, right? You sell your ass a little bit. There's truth behind it. There's still a part of you within it, but you give up some of yourself in order to kind of make it big, and then the goal hopefully is to maybe find your truth in it or fix the situation. I mean, like thinking about the end dialogue at the end of the party when Sam is recording and Coco is that goes on that monologue, which felt very out of place. Like it felt very cliche and out of place, but it was her wake up call, right? She made all this effort, and like going back to white acceptance, she made all this effort to be accepted into whiteness, and then she saw that white people get too comfortable when you want their acceptance. They get too comfortable and they get disrespectful, and then she had a wake up call, like, oh shit, right? Like, nah, this isn't what it is. And sometimes you need that, right? Sometimes you need a wake up call, and that's again, that's the art, that's the inspiration, that's doing. Um, Again, like for me, watching the movie and just kind of getting a reminder, like okay, like it's not there's more to it, and I don't, yeah, that's it, yeah,
so question, because you brought up something that I think we should dive in a little bit on, around the concept of selling out,
right,
right, or being a sellout, especially when it comes to culture and race.
right,
And I think to Coco's point, in her head, she was like, how could I be a sellout? How am I selling out these people when they're worth nothing, right? There's nothing. I'm gaining nothing from them.
right,
Being being from the hood and being from the ghetto and having this ghetto name and all that. What do I owe them, right?
right,
And I think a lot of people have that mindset that you spend your whole life trying to better your life to leave a situation that you may have grown up in, and then once you get to the level that you need to be, you don't go back. They're like, oh, you're a sellout because you don't go back, but it's not
right,
your responsibility to go back. you,
right,
you did, your responsibility was to put yourself in a better situation to take the next steps. Like you did what you needed to do to better your life.
right,
So the concept of a sellout, specifically when it comes to race and culture, is something that it kind of gets under my skin a little bit, because I think people are quick to call you a sellout or say that you're acting white, or you're doing too much of this or too much of that,
Right.
but they don't take a second to look at themselves or educate themselves, or even back to the point about having a deeper dialogue with the person, and seeing what they've gone through. I'll say this: I have a friend of mine. I won't name drop him, but I have a friend of mine who uh, I was inviting him to do a talk with some students of mine, and I'm from Brooklyn, New York, so I'm like, bro, come to Brooklyn. He lives in the Upper West Side now. He's like, black, a black guy. He's like, nah, I'm not coming to Brooklyn. I would never come to Brooklyn to speak to students. And I was a little
Man.
taken back. I was like,
Yeah.
why not? Like, this is our youth. And he said, on the flip side, how about you bring your students to here? How about you bring your students to the Upper West Side to
Right.
see what life could be? And it really kind of caught me by surprise, because I wasn't, when he said no, I took it as a negative. I took it as, oh, he's a in my head. I'm like, he's a sellout. He doesn't want to help his people. But he was like, nah, I'm not going back to where I can. I'm not going back to that. How about we bring the students that are in that situation to see something different? He's like, you bring them to me, and I'll show them something different. And
Right.
that goes back to just being more open minded, and um, just understanding that, just like I said, that the words sell out. I guess sell out is one word.
Right.
um,
Right. Right.
is it's just it makes me cringe, like especially when it comes to race. So what are your thoughts about that?
I really like the story and the perspective. Right. I think what happens, or what we view too many times, is the initial conversation, right, with him, which is just, nah, I'm not doing that. Then it's just like it just ends there, right? And people don't offer an additional option, or they don't think big, they don't think bigger, and they don't think in terms of, you know, there's no reason for me to go back. That's like my base reason. But why? Is it because I think I'm too good to go back there? Is it, it's not worth my time? Or is it, to your friend's point, why just be another person keeping them in Brooklyn? Let them explore the world, right? Like me, I grew up in Brooklyn too. Once I started going to school in Manhattan, the entire world opened up for me. The possibilities and just the awareness of possibilities opened up. And children need that. Children need that inspiration. Children need to see something different. Children need to see that there's more than their neighborhood, more than like the few couple blocks they grew up in. They need that, and it's important. Um, Within itself, I mean, again, the term sellout is kind of corny, right? Going back to, I believe that the work you do and the life you live, it needs to be for yourself. But again, I think there's a responsibility in terms of supporting the next generation. And, if you care, right? If you care, if you see something wrong with society, if you see something wrong with the way a specific group is living, then making an effort to support in whatever capacity. I think if you know something's wrong and you find success and you don't make the effort, then, I mean, I won't use the word sellout, but then, I mean, it's corny, and to me, you're part of the problem also. Yeah.
But uh making a way for the next generation can also be categorized as you leading in what you leading a positive life, or you leading in a field, or like there's so many ways to tap into that. um
Right.
so I just think it's, once again, it's all about perspective and how people engage. But you know back to my friend's point, he wanted to show the kids something different, but he did, him going through the work to get to where he can show them something different is something that should be appreciated and
Right.
shouldn't be taken lightly. So I had to learn a lesson in that. And I feel like that's the thing with Coco. Coco's like, hey, I'm trying to get ahead by any means necessary. but with that, I don't own anybody's shit. Like I did,
Right.
like nobody, and I feel like also she feels like nobody owes her. She's kind of slick with it. But in some ways she's like, yo, I'm gonna do what I need to do to get ahead. And as you said, she learned a lesson along the way. That's all.
Right.
So
Now, I want to maybe just touch on one more topic, and then we could maybe jump into reviews.
okay.
And I was thinking about just privilege, um, because the movie is in an a fictional Ivy League school, and I was thinking about, like, going back to the idea of when Black people speak, there's like we and us, and there's all this group talk, but you don't realize that a lot of the work that's being done in the top really disconnects some of the people from the bottom. So, like, yesterday, I saw this Wall Street Journal article, and it was these NBA All Stars invest in $1 billion Harvard real estate development, and it's Kyle Lowry of the Raptors, Andre Iguodala of the Heat, Drew Holiday of the Bucks, and Andre Drummond of the Lakers. They're part of an investment group with $30 million into this Boston development, and the terms are that after developer Speyer submitted a proposal to build the project, Harvard asked the New York firm if it would commit to selling 5% of the development to Black and Latino people. And it fell in line with me watching Dear White People, right? Thinking about the, the the upper class or the middle class, or the Black people who have money, Black people who can afford to live in that area, and who these small gestures support or benefit, right? And additionally, 5%. Like, how is where's the that's I mean, that feels disrespectful, right? Like, like, some support.
Yeah.
We'll give you 5%, Black and Latino, 5%. So, like, you don't even, I mean, no, I don't have the full contract layout. It isn't saying if it's 2.5% Black,
Yeah.
2.5% Latino, but to still group two races into a minimal of 5%, it feels insulting. And I'm just I think about, again, who do these, like, who does Dear White People really help and support, right? Who is this movie really speaking to? Like, you say it's speaking to white people, but it's also speaking to white people who interact with Black people in certain spaces, right? There's still a huge generation, and this division of Blackness that's struggling, just like the whites and Asians and Hispanics struggling also. So whenever I think about these movies or these gestures that are supposed to be inclusive, I think that it only benefits a certain amount of people. And, like, going back to the idea of being a sellout, unless those people who benefit aren't making additional efforts, like, I mean, even using Tyler Perry, right? Making a production studio, it creates more jobs, there's more capital, there's more money flowing through Black neighborhoods and Black communities, and it grants inspiration. But I think there still needs to be, um, like, some type of additional effort, or um, I don't know. For five, I'm jumping over, but 5% just seems like it's nothing, and it doesn't really benefit anyone except people who can already afford it. It feels limiting.
So thanks for sharing that, because you just what popped into my head was, and I know we wanted to talk about it, but it was Reggie. Reggie popped into my head, and the reason being is
Okay.
because Reggie is a type of Black person that a lot of us are afraid of. Right? Reggie is he reminds me of, he has that Farrakhan. He has that, like, this is our chance. This is a
Right.
chance for us to take control. And I guess some quick background. Reggie's one of the students from the Black Student Union. He's also one of the students from the Armstrong-Parker House, who I don't know if him and Sam are dating. Maybe I guess he has a thing. They weren't dating. I guess that he has a thing for Sam. He
Yeah.
lets her
Yeah.
know about it, and him and her have a moment. But throughout the film, he constantly wants to put the Black students in a position to not only succeed but to excel. But every moment, he's like, when they in the cafeteria, he's like, "Yo, we got to support Sam." When they go do the protests, he's like, "Yo, you ready to do this?" Like, he's about it. He's about that
Right,
life.
right, right,
And the reason I bring him up is because it's brothers like him that, because they have uh, such a strong belief in putting us in a position, and I say us again because putting us in a position to kind of take that next step. A lot of us shut it down. A lot of people shut it down, and in his
right,
case, it was getting shut down. But obviously, for Sam's inconsistencies and trying to figure out himself, but it still is getting shut down. Another thing that's interesting about the film overall is, are all the students, paying to be in school, or some on scholarship, or some struggling? You don't see that dynamic. They don't
right,
share that, so you don't know who's going through what, because based on Sam's conversation with her mom and her dad, one could think that there's some struggle there. Right? Her dad is ill. She's talking to her mom. You never hear her mom. You never hear her voice. You just kind of see the conversation. So
right,
you kind of have to visualize it on your own. But I just think Reggie's the type of guy that is dangerous, and it would have been nice for him to act on him more. His
right,
his dynamic with Lionel, to kind of it basically, Lionel became Reggie's, like, I want to say boss, but Lionel kind of became the leader of the free world by the end of the film. He was the man.
right, right,
Um,
right.
so yeah, and I'll end with this. What was very surprising was that toward the end of the film, how Coco and Troy's dynamic, like, it like threw me off. I thought
Right.
everybody had figured out their identity. They figured out where they were going, and then Coco's like, Troy, let's take this next step. I kind of want to rock with you, and Troy's like, nah, I can't. Motherfucker trying, motherfucker trying to get ahead. So
Right, right,
it
right,
was very
right.
interesting that the writers and the producer brought that back. Like, yo, I still, and he never says it, but she says it. She kind of calls him out for it. Um, and his dynamic with Reggie and Lionel obviously are different, but that was interesting where it ended kind of on that note.
Yeah. I guess my last point would be, I guess, going back into like the colorism aspect of the darker characters still being, um, I guess, denied, right? Denied from. I don't know, man. I mean, like on one aspect, you think about Troy, right? Troy is running for now. He's running for president of the school, right?
Yep.
And having Coco on his side would, it'd be like Barack and Michelle, right? It'd be like a strong, beautiful black couple. But he has an image to maintain, and his belief, even though it's rooted in a lot of reality, and I understand there's of racial dynamics and how people think, having a darker woman on his side would limit his success, and that's sad. It's unfortunate. It's a fucked up message.
Whoa, wait.
And go
Sorry to
ahead.
cut you off. Let's pause there because we have to remember that he also did date Sam.
Right, right, right,
So,
right, right.
so
But Sam was also light, right?
exactly.
So
So, and then he
yeah,
dated. I think her name was Sophia.
right,
So, was it something that his dad pushed him to do? Because I know his dad was so mad when he when he.
right, right. I mean, no, I definitely think it's rooted and like kind of going back to the conversation of his father being an influence and his father kind of guiding him and telling him how to live and exist, and Troy, I guess, honoring, wanting to whatever. I mean, however you want to view it as, right? It could be Troy just wanting to honor his father, but also just knowing that this is the best and easiest solution for him. But I think regardless, I think it's I think the bigger picture is that regardless is corny. I understand the reason and the logic, but I still think it's corny, and it's a sad. I think it's just like a sad way to end this movie, right? We see all this progress and we see this transition, but you still see the main characters still refusing some of the blackness, right? Like still refusing the real and raw blackness based off, whether it's based off of skin. For Sam, I mean, not so much. I mean, she had the relationship with Gabe that was lingering in there. Um, but yeah, I guess mostly just for like Troy, like it was dismissive, and it felt like a setback.
It was.
And also seems that like he didn't really gain growth. He's still just focused on himself and what he needs to do for himself. And And maybe I mean that's probably part of it, right? Is showing that although you can have this awakening, although you can see things are messed, like going back to the idea of selling out, right? You can succeed, you can see things are messed up, and you can decide, right? I'm gonna do it for myself still, or I'm gonna try to expand. Like going back to Reggie, right? I'm gonna help us excel. I'm gonna help the collective and the experience excel. And everyone isn't going to do that. Everyone isn't meant to. But I think it's important to note that for the again, for the people who want to see change and growth, you got to make the effort, right? You got to when you get the inspiration, when you see those moments of growth, you push through and you ride out the wave. I think.
Yeah, and Troy, and growth is not something that all happens at once. So I think
Right.
there was tremendous growth how Troy and his father connected, right, in that relationship. But him, otherwise, there's still some levels where he needs to mature.
Right. Right. So yeah, let's wrap up with these reviews. So it's man, people are funny. People are funny. So I went on Rotten Tomatoes, and the official like critic review is 91%, right? Which is it's a great score. But when you go to audience rating, it's 61%. So I pulled up a few reviews from. So actually, when you look at the majority of the critic reviews, they're from white people. So I skipped all of those. Like I don't want to. I don't care. Most of the times, I don't care about white perspective when it comes to black art, because I know there's a limit and there's a desire to. I think there's a limited capacity in judging, right? Because number one, you don't truly understand and embody the black experience. It isn't something you can tread or experience, right? Whiteness can't enter blackness, but blackness, has to live within whiteness. So I think it's limited. So I found like maybe two official black critics.
Also,
And the
keep in
rest is
mind too,
just go
white
ahead.
those same white people are behind a computer. So the
Right,
conversation, the review they would give you sitting in front of you is totally different than that review they're writing on behind the
right,
screen.
or the review that they're sharing with the other friends,
Yeah.
which is fun. But just seeing the audience review, right? Like even like the New York Times review, it's, it's dear white people, advanced course in diversity, and it's just people in hurt feelings, right? Just feeling like the film victimizing themselves, and it's just it's interesting, man. It's interesting how people go straight. It's interesting how people see themselves as a victim in a situation where other people are just showing a light to their experience, right? If I tell a story about an experience I had with a white person and I share it, white people will watch it and be like, "Oh, well, that's not true," and it's not you though, right? Like, where do you get that mindset to insert yourself to think that it's about you? So, there's some, and granted, I know it's all races and all groups, but again, this is a racial dynamic in conversation. So I think there's always something rooted. There's always something rooted when it comes to race topics in whiteness with people who feel the need to kind of just defend and say something. The cliche racism is over. Racism is a thing of the past, and it's just that inability to be present and the inability to kind of take the inspiration from the art as it's being presented.
Yeah. 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 And then also too, you look at how, let's just say there was a Dear Black People movie, right? How would the reviews different? Let's just say, matter of fact, let's just say the name of the movie, same exact movie,
Right,
but it was named Dear Black People.
right, right.
Just imagine how that review would have changed. I'll leave it at that. I have nothing. I'll put it like that. Hopefully you get my point. Hopefully the listeners get my point.
No, no. Expand on your point, man. Don't assume. Expand on your point.
That's
Expand on your
fair.
point.
I'm saying that based on what we're seeing or what we watched in this film, because of the name of the movie, "Dear White People," I'm not sure. I'm not looking at the reviews, but I'm sure that there are people that have brought it up. How the name of the film and what actually happened in the film is against them, right? It's about them and how we're coming for them. Whereas if the name of the movie was "They're Black People," and those same people watch the movie, it'd be more so of how it's an uplifting film for Black
Right.
people.
It'd be a comedy. It'd be a funny Tyler Perry comedy, and they'd love it. Yes, I like that. I love that. You're
Uh,
right. You're right.
so it's interesting because I feel like you and I always talk about titles, right, and the names of shows, movies, and even albums, and how these titles have a huge role in how it's perceived. And as you said, when you saw Dead White People originally, you're like, I don't really want to. But after watching the film, your perspective changed, or your perspective developed.
Right.
And I think if the movie was named Dead Black People, like you said, it'd be a comedy, and we would, and it'd be the same exact film, you know. So that's what I mean. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the conditioning, right? So I'll just go through a few quick reviews. I'm looking at Rotten Tomatoes. Very patronizing and boring. This is not enjoyable at all. Incredibly unrealistic on every level. Most of the grittiness is channeled into characters' treatment of each other. Horrible rich white people and horrible rich black people. Great fashion, though. And I also think, I mean, I don't. How many reviews have you left on like IMDb or anything in your entire life?
I've never left a review ever.
Right. I've probably done like 2 reviews on IMDb. So I feel like the majority of reviews are white people, right? The majority of reviews come from white people who have time to critique and I don't like this and this is this and this, they whatever their logic is. So it's just interesting for me to see this. Well, here's a good one. Dear White People succeeds in showing that the viewer the awkward and intense circumstances based by POC in a world of normalized and institutionalized racism.
Hmm.
Right.
Preach.
So that so like that there's I want to say there's hope. Yeah, I guess there is. There's hope in changing, not changing, hope in allowing people to kind of develop new perspective and gain new perspective. But at times it's like you said, you could put it right in front of them, right? And they're just gonna go with that innate. I'm a victim. You're trying to. This isn't realistic. How do you know? How do you know it's not realistic? You live everywhere. Like people have this arrogance of omniscience. Like they know everything going on everywhere at every point in time, and it's like nah. These are stories, right? The stories come from somewhere, and I think I think that's important, right? Knowing that the stories come from somewhere, and knowing that the stories being told to help you open up your eyes and again, I go back to Lionel, man, being the person to look to, right? And
He's
hopefully
an
it becomes
equalizer.
you. Yeah, hopefully that becomes your role, right? And whatever you want to do, you become an equalizer. You become someone who can provide fair and unbiased perspectives, so that everyone, not everyone, but people can get more understanding and awareness of what's working, what isn't working, where you might be at fault, where other people are at fault, and create the space for dialogue so we can heal shit. Because I think that's the purpose and the goal.
Yeah, and be subjective, right? Like like in those conversations, it's just easier to have that type of dialogue and say, well, if you don't understand something, open your mouth and give a reason why you don't understand it. Don't just attack, and sit behind a computer screen and write a review.
Right, right. All right. Anything else you want to close out with?
Nah, man, this is one of my favorite podcast episodes you and I have done. This is a great movie. I'm glad we did
Yeah,
this. Um,
yeah,
Great movie choice.
yeah. A good choice. Yeah, good choice. You chose it, right? Yeah, good choice
I
on
don't
your
even
end.
I don't even know, man. I
Yeah,
just
yeah.
I just put in a bunch of movies.
Yeah. And like I said, it's good. Rewatching and kind of going back to gain new perspective, and connecting it with where we are collectively, and hoping that things get better.
Yeah,
Um,
I guess I
but
would love to end on this, and this would be the last thing I say is anyone who listens to this episode, as you listen to it, and if something pulls your strings or makes you feel away, I implore you to feel free to reach out and let's have a conversation. I'm big on that. I talk about it a lot in everything I do. So I'm always good for having a positive conversation and being open to agree and to disagree. So you hear something that you feel makes you feel away, don't go write a negative review. Just come on down and talk to us.
Right. And that's the thing, right? People don't have the space. I guess this will be the last thing I say, even though we keep saying it. People don't have the space. People aren't willing to communicate. Reviews are just, this is how I feel, and then it's solidified. There needs to be dialogue, and for us, this is kind of opening that space. We'll be doing a clubhouse for this week, probably Friday the 11th, and we'll finalize the date and time. But yeah, this has been episode 3 of the Nothing Moves Without Us podcast. Excuse me. This has been episode 3 of the Nothing Moves Without Us, a Black culture podcast, a bi-weekly podcast where we discuss the past 30 years of Black entertainment, media, music, arts, and movies. You can find us on IG at a Black culture podcast. You can find us on Instagram at Nothing Moves Without Us, a Black culture podcast. I'm your host, Clifford. You can find me on IG at Galt's Conditioning.
And I'm Thomas. You can also find me on IG at The Connection Curator.
All right. Till next time. Peace.
Peace out.